If you're listening to this podcast episode, you are definitely one of those people who has been dreaming of a successful writing career, probably for a long time. You know that so many people have the intention of writing a book. Like a huge percentage of people in this country say that they've got a book in them. They want to be a writer. They want to tell their story. And a lot of people also want to be a successful author. They want to be known for their stories. They want to touch readers everywhere. Some of us even dream of being a full-time writer who can make a living from telling stories. But so many of us fail in this mission. So many of us don't finish our book. So many of us don't publish our book. Or some of us who publish our book somehow are holding ourselves back from the true success. There are so many reasons and obstacles that are standing in the way of writers who are hoping to be successful, but not many people talk about one of the weirdest obstacles out there. And I'm talking about the fear of leveling up. You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, that's not me. Look, I'm listening to this podcast about being a more successful writer. Maybe I've even called a writing coach. Maybe I'm taking writing courses like the ones that your writing coach, offer on my website. But I have to say that you probably still have this fear of leveling up. It's also referred to as fear of success, fear of achievement. And let me tell you that even if you don't think you have it, you should be listening to this episode, because guess what? I have it. I realize that I am my own worst enemy when it comes to my writing success. So today we're going to be talking about this phenomenon, this fear of leveling up. This can create anxiety, hesitation, or resistance when faced with the prospect of reaching a higher level of success, responsibility, or recognition in your personal or professional life. And writing a book is one of those things that encapsulates both your personal and your professional life just because of the very nature of spilling your guts out on paper. And there are so many factors that contribute to this fear of leveling up. And I want to talk about this problem today on this podcast episode. And I don't think that we'll be solving it completely, but I think that starting to think about it is going to open the door to more exploration of the possibilities and what's holding you back. And I think it might really motivate you to go further in your writing career than ever before. And remember, if you have questions about this or if you're intrigued by this, go check out my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com. Go check out one of my courses like the Idea to Publish in 6 Months course, because this course encapsulates so many of the things that you need to do to actually start leveling up. And it does it in a manageable way so that your fear is definitely abated and you get to start leveling up without even really realizing it. And finally, you'll be at a new level before you know it. So let's dive right in to how this problem impacts so many writers, probably even including you. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Welcome to the How to Be an Author podcast. I am your writing coach, Karena Akhavein. I have really been working with so many writers just like you for the better part of 20 years. And believe me, I've seen it all. I have seen writers go from zero to successful, but I've also seen writers who stay stuck in the reeds, not because they're not good enough, not because they don't have a great story, not because they can't write, but because they are scared. They are creating their own limitations because of all these fears. And it's not just the fear that you think. It's not just fear of rejection. That's definitely a fear you need to move through as a writer. But the bigger fear is fear of leveling up. And you might think that's ridiculous, but listen on. Let's talk about a few authors who are beyond successful. I'm going to talk about their beginnings, their rise to success and fame, and how this changed their lives. Because here's the thing: success, recognition, fame, all of that does change your life. And you might be thinking, oh, it changes your life in only good ways. But believe me, it can change your life in ways that are scary. So let's talk about J.K. Rowling. We all know who she is, right? Before she became known as the author of the Harry Potter series, she was a struggling single mom living on welfare in Scotland. She had gotten so many rejections from publishers for her manuscript about a young wizard named Harry Potter. But finally, when Harry Potter was accepted by a publisher in 1997, it was published and launched a global phenomenon. As you can imagine, Rowling's life changed dramatically as she became one of the wealthiest and most influential authors in the world. The success of the Harry Potter series changed her from single mom to the head of a media empire, which included film adaptations, merchandise, and a massive fan base. Her financial status was massive, and she became involved in philanthropy, supporting various charities. She was transformed from an unknown writer to a literary icon. But of course, what you also know about J.K. Rowling is the controversy about her transgender comments. She definitely made some controversial tweets about the transgender community, and her stance caused fans and stars of the wizarding world to speak out against the author. You might be looking at the whole controversy that happened when J.K. Rowling made certain comments about trans communities and trans individuals as proof that when you become famous, you are in danger of being canceled. But really, I think when you look at what happened, if Rowling had apologized and said she was wrong and had made amends for her statements, she wouldn't have had the huge fallout that she did have. She could have continued on and she would have kept much of her fan base. But since she refused to back down, that's on her. So let that be a lesson that if you say something that is your belief and you don't back down from it, yes, there is a chance that some of your fans may turn against you, but many times it's your own doing. Now let's look at another character in this whole famous author pantheon. We're going to be talking about Stephen King, who struggled in the early years of his writing career. He faced so many rejections for his short stories and novels. He had to work odd jobs to support his family, and his breakthrough novel, Carrie, was initially rejected over 30 times. And of course, as you may know, when it was eventually published in 1974, it became an absolute bestseller, and it established him as a prominent author in the horror genre. And then from there on, he went from strength to strength with novels like The Shining, It, and The Stand. He's a prolific and successful writer, and he's also written a great book called On Writing, which has a lot of wisdom for people who want to be writers like him. He is somebody who shows that being a writer kind of boils down to hard work, lifestyle, luck, and a lot more, by the way. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, his success is great, but yeah, it completely changed his life. He has to sit down and write every day. He has to keep doing things, and he's very much in the public eye. And yes, that's true. Stephen King went from just a regular dude to a world famous writer. And that comes with a lot of changes and a lot of responsibilities, something to look at as well. Let's talk about an author called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This author grew up in Nigeria. She initially studied medicine before pursuing a degree in communication and political science. Her first novel, Purple Hibiscus, was well received, but it didn't make her widely known on the international literary scene. She gained global recognition with her second novel, Half of a Yellow Sun. This won the Orange Prize for Fiction in 2007. Subsequent works like Americana and We Should All Be Feminists brought her widespread acclaim and established her as a prominent voice in contemporary literature. This success totally expanded her platform. She became a renowned speaker on issues such as feminism, identity, and culture. Her TED Talk, We Should All Be Feminists, amplified her influence even further, and it really contributed to global conversations on gender equality. So from being, this communications and political science person who was even in medicine, she turned into a cultural and intellectual figure. And now she spends most of her time advocating for social issues and promoting diverse perspectives in literature. She's also touring around and speaking in public. And you might be thinking to yourself, wait, this poor woman just wanted to be an author. She wanted to write fiction. And now she has to be a public figure and speaker. I want to hide behind my computer. Yes, you're right that sometimes when you have a platform, it can grow and change in ways that you didn't expect. And that's definitely a possibility, but we should all be so lucky. And of course, you choose a little bit what you choose to do with your success. And that's where I want to talk about this fear of leveling up. I think that many of us have this fear of how our life is going to change once we are known. There are very few tangible consequences for not finishing a book. Like, what? Your life's not going to change if you don't finish your book. You haven't finished your book yet. And, if you never finish your book, well, your current situation isn't that bad, is it? But let's talk about what happens if you do level up. Let's talk about what happens if you do finish that book, publish that book, and you become successful. Great, right? Well, that success can bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and that means uncertainty. The unknown aspects of higher levels of achievement, well, they can be scary. They can be intimidating. A lot of people secretly prefer the familiarity of their current situation, even if it's not ideal. And this is something I often say to my writers when we're talking about an inciting incident in their book. I always say that that inciting incident needs to be damn powerful because it has to overcome your character's desire to stay in their current situation, even if it's not ideal. Because familiarity is not as scary as the great unknown. So definitely look at that and realize that that's something that happens to all of us. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. But again, when you look at people's stories and you see their overnight success, that success was never overnight. They had time to prepare themselves, and they brought that success about by their actions. So, you can very easily start going down that road and laying the foundations. And if you decide that actually oh no, I actually don't want to be successful for real reasons, well, you can pull the plug or you can slow down, hit those brakes, and you won't have to be a public figure. You won't have to have these responsibilities. You won't have to be on a TED stage if you don't want to be. The other problem with leveling up is that imposter syndrome. And I have heard of this mostly, I have to say, many times from women. Female authors or females in general in the creative fields, they will compare themselves to, and again, hugely generalizing, but they'll compare themselves to men in creative fields. I feel that many women feel like they have to put their achievements last. They have to put their career last before everybody else's needs. They have to raise the kids or, take care of the household or support their mate. And they have to, this fear that they're not as confident, they don't deserve the success. And, what's going to happen to them, their relationships, their identity, if all of a sudden they are in the public eye. And I see this time and time again with women in all different fields. And I think that for many men also who are in creative fields, they can have the sensitivity that means that they feel a little bit more like they identify with that thing of, my expectation is that I be more soft and quiet and discreet. And, stepping out into the spotlight, all of a sudden that makes me into a whole different type of person. And I'm going to be found out for not being as competent and as talented as my success suggests. That is definitely a feeling that we all have. And guess what? You deserve your success. Another massive thing we were talking about being on that stage, having, this schedule that you need to maintain, having to maintain production in things. Yeah, there are increased expectations that come with success. You expect more of yourself and others expect more of you. And that pressure to consistently perform at a higher level, oh my God, that can be overwhelming. That can be terrifying. I get it, right? What if you write one book that does hugely well and then your next book totally flops? That's terrifying too. But you know what? You should be so lucky to have at least one popular book and then have one flop. So what? In the greater scheme of things, that is so much better than what you have now, right? That fear of success, though, I get it. It is so closely tied to a fear of failure at a higher level, right? Right now, you're just worrying about not finishing your book, or you're just worrying about little things like your beta reader not adoring your book or not finding an agent. But then you start worrying about maintaining your success, maintaining a really high level of success, maintaining a level of earnings, maintaining a level of fame. And that leads to some pretty self-sabotaging behaviors, such as not working on your stuff, trying to downplay what you've done, not putting yourself out there. And I find that so self-sabotaging because I believe that, we all deserve to step out into the light. When you write something amazing, you put a hell of a lot of work into that. And you self-sabotaging so that you don't get the recognition you deserve just because you're afraid that you're going to have to keep performing at this higher level. Again, let me tell you, once you're performing at a higher level, it's like having a bunch of plates up in the air. Just keeping those plates spinning is easier than getting them up there in the first place. So challenge yourself to start performing at a higher level, and then at a higher one, it's not that much harder than performing at where you are now. But I get it. People are creatures of habit, right? It's cozy and fun to sit around watching Netflix instead of being out there promoting your book or working on your book. That fear of leaving the familiar and facing that discomfort, it can really hold you back from pursuing and embracing success. I also know so many people who are like, but I love my life and I love my friends and they're going to judge me. And what if, I become this famous person and all of a sudden, like, I'm not with my friends anymore, or they're judging me, or, I have to move in different circles. Yes, but again, that happens slowly. And look at authors like Colleen Hoover, for example. She has brought along all of her old friends and colleagues along with her on this crazy journey she's on. So you don't have to dump your friends. And if you remain true to yourself, your friends are still going to be your friends once you are a famous author. But again, we should all have, this problem. This is not something that happens automatically. And, the chances of being well known, well, they ascend astronomically and exponentially if you're actually doing the work, but it's not something that happens as a matter of course. So remember that. But I think that oftentimes, you have these deep-rooted beliefs about who you are as a person, and this really contributes to your resistance to leveling up, as well as your assumptions about the judgment of others or the envy of others, or, what's going to happen to you socially. And I get it that can be terrifying, but I think that it's kind of worth it in the end. And also this loss of work-life balance, right? You lose the balance you currently have. And this has potentially an impact on your life. Like, yeah, can you play pickleball for 3 hours a day when you're a famous author? maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I get it. Like, dedication and hard work, they are required when it comes to success. And I get it. Does your family want to see more of you? Probably. Does your full-time job need you a certain number of hours? Probably. But look at what the balance is like and look at where you're working and doing busy work and where you're letting other things expand beyond where they actually matter. Like, how much quality time do you need with your dog? Your dog can sit by the desk while you write. You can take your dog on book tour with you. Or how much time do you really need to devote to that report for work? Can you just knock it out really fast, focus on it, get it behind you, and then work on writing things? You probably can. So I think so many times we think that I'm working so hard. My life is working this way. And, maybe I shouldn't expect anything more. Yeah, that definitely impacts your possible success because you are holding yourself back from leveling up. And many times also, I understand that there are cultural or familial expectations and values. I know that for me, some of my books, I have hidden from my family that I write these, even though I'm a grown-ass adult, right? But there are these family expectations about what one does and what one doesn't do, and what's okay and what's not, and what's shameful and what's cool. And so straying away from that really is kind of scary, right? You've got this fear of judgment and disapproval, but really at the end of the day, you should be just answering to yourself. Your personal growth and development, they are nobody's business but yours. This fear of leveling up that you have, start to think about it. Where's it coming from? Start to identify the sources of it and start to identify the meaning of it. This self-reflection is going to be crucial for a mindset shift. And then start to think of strategies that you can implement to start leveling up. And you don't have to level up all at once. You can level up in a series of small steps. Remember that as well. Now, if this sounds intriguing to you and you're starting to think about like, okay, so how do I level up in this way that's not so scary and not so overwhelming? How do I level up in a way that doesn't just, blow up my life and scare off everyone I've ever loved? Well, talk to me, your writing coach, or take my course from idea to published in 6 months. This thing is a blueprint to slowly revolutionizing your writing career, from your writing skills to your writing productivity to your writing success, business-wise, marketing-wise, author platform-wise. This is something that's going to help you to gain visibility in a way that doesn't feel yucky. So definitely check it out and let me know what you think of your possible fear of leveling up as a writer, because I think this is really a major issue that not that many people talk about. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more accepted it's going to become to start reflecting on it that much more and having discussions about it with other writer friends. And that alone can really help you to start to get yourself out of that fear of leveling up and get to the place you deserve to be in as a writer. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the How to Be an Author podcast. I look forward to being with you next week. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.